When most people imagine ancient Greece, they picture philosophers in white robes, looking very serious, arguing about truth and justice. What people forget is that those same men often had wine-stained lips, half-empty cups, and probably a headache from the night before. So, before you get cozy, maybe dim the lights, grab a blanket, and sip something warm. And if you enjoy the weirdness of history as much as I do, hit like and subscribe. Seriously, I'm curious, where are you tuning in from and what time is it for you? It's always fun to see who's joining this slightly chaotic journey across centuries. Because ancient Greece didn't just invent democracy, they basically invented the party. The Greeks had a very special kind of gathering called a symposium. The word literally means drinking together, which tells you everything you need to know. These weren't polite dinners with calm chatter. No, symposia were closer to a mix between a frat house keg party and a political strategy meeting. Everyone drank, argued, sang, sometimes fought, and almost always ended up regretting it the next morning. Now, here's the funny part. Greeks thought drinking was civilized, but not in the way you think. They didn't drink their wine straight. That was considered barbaric. Instead, they always mixed, sometimes 1 part wine, 3 parts water, sometimes weaker. They believed drinking pure wine was something only crazy people, or worse, Persians, would do. But let's be honest, when you're drinking cup after cup, watered down or not, you're still going to stumble out of that room. The host of a symposium would decide the rules. Imagine being invited to a party, and the first thing the host says is, "Tonight everyone has to drink until we pass out." Or, "No, tonight we drink slowly and talk about philosophy." There were even hired men called symposiarchs, basically party managers, who made sure no one drank too little or too much, which is hilarious, because how do you even measure that? Yes, sir, you've had the exact correct amount of wine to make Plato proud. There were the games. Drinking games were absolutely part of Greek parties. One of the most popular was called kotobos, which sounds innocent until you hear the rules. Players would fling the last drops of their wine at a target, sometimes a dish, sometimes a statue, sometimes even a slave holding something fragile, and if you hit it, you won. Imagine being the poor guy whose job was to stand still while tipsy men threw wine at you. But it wasn't just about games. Symposia often included entertainment, musicians, dancers, and, yes, prostitutes hired for the night. A party could easily shift from serious debates about the meaning of life to very non-serious contests of who could sing the dirtiest song or flirt with the most people before sunrise. And here's a detail you won't see in history textbooks. Respectable wives were never invited. Symposia were strictly male affairs. If there were women present, they were entertainers or sex workers. That means when your history teacher says, "The Greeks debated democracy at bank," a bunch of drunk men decided the future of Athens while a flute girl played in the background. Even famous philosophers like Socrates joined in. He had a reputation for being the guy who could drink forever without passing out. Imagine that. The father of Western philosophy, also the champion of the no hangover contest. Some people even claimed he could outdrink an entire army. If true, that would make him not just the smartest man in Athens, but also the hardest partier. Here's a detail you won't see in history textbooks. Respectable wives were never invited. Symposia were strictly male affairs. If there were women present, they were entertainers or sex workers. That means when your history teacher says, "The Greeks debated democracy at banquets," what they really mean is, a bunch of drunk men decided the future of Athens while a flute girl played in the background. Even famous philosophers like Socrates joined in. He had a reputation for being the guy who could drink forever without passing out. Imagine that. The father of Western philosophy, also the champion of the no hangover contest. Some people even claimed he could outdrink an entire army. If true, that would make him not just the smartest man in Athens, but also the hardest partier. And symposia weren't always tame. They could get wild, with arguments turning into fistfights and guests leaving the house to terrorize the streets. In fact, one time an entire scandal erupted because drunk men dressed as satyrs, half-goat creatures, ran around Athens destroying sacred statues. That little prank ended up shaking the whole democracy. Proof that drunk nights can change history. What's funny is how normal it all. Drinking, singing, flirting, even fighting. These weren't side hobbies for the Greeks, they were baked into the culture. If you were a respectable man in Athens, people expected you to attend symposia, just like today people expect you to show up at work meetings, except instead of boring PowerPoints, you had wine, lyres, and maybe a little illegal fun. Of course, the Greeks did everything with ceremony. Wine wasn't just poured into cups, it was mixed in a giant bowl called a crater, then ladled out. The host would often say a prayer before the drinking began, as if to make sure the gods approved of everyone getting absolutely plastered. That's right, even binge drinking had a religious touch. But here's the irony. While symposia often started with poetry, philosophy, and polite conversation, they almost always ended in chaos. Think of every party you've ever been to. At the beginning, everyone looks nice. Glasses are full, people are chatting about life. By the end, someone is crying in the corner, someone else is making out with the wrong person, and at least one guy is asleep on the floor. Ancient Greece was no different. And remember, these weren't rare events. For the elite, symposia were a regular part of life, which means the ideas that shaped the Western world, democracy, philosophy, art, were born in rooms full of drunken debate, bad singing, and way too much spilled wine. Civilization as we know it was built on hangovers. Now, if you're thinking, okay, but what about the ordinary people? Don't worry, drinking wasn't just for the rich. Ordinary Greeks also loved their wine, though their parties were less glamorous. Farmers drank after a long day of work, soldiers drank to celebrate victories, and festivals often turned entire cities into one giant street party. In Athens, during the festival of Dionysus, everyone, men, women, slaves, even children, was allowed to get drunk in honor of the god of wine. Imagine your whole town being excused to drink as much as possible because the gods demanded it. That's the Greek genius. They didn't just party for fun, they partied with divine permission. And this brings us to a bigger truth. In Greece, drinking wasn't just about getting drunk. It was about bonding, showing off, debating, and honestly, networking. Some of the biggest political deals were made over spilled cups of wine. Some of the dirtiest gossip about leaders was whispered after too many rounds. If you wanted power in Athens, you needed a strong speech at the assembly, but you also needed to survive a symposium without making a fool of yourself. So yes, the Greeks invented philosophy, but they also invented the party where philosophy could only be heard if you shouted louder than the guy vomiting in the corner. And this is just the start. Because if you thought their drinking culture was wild, wait until you hear what they did with sex. So, we've established that the Greeks loved their symposia, those messy gatherings where democracy and drunken singing shared the same couch. But here's something even funnier. Wine in Greece wasn't just a party drink. It was practically the national beverage. People didn't ask, "Do you want a glass of wine?" They asked, "How much water should I mix in your wine?" Because drinking water by itself, dangerous. Back then, water was often dirty, full of germs, and could make you sick. Wine, on the other hand, was considered safer. So the Greeks did what any logical society would do. They poured wine into their water, turning every sip into a mini cocktail. That's right. Kids drank it. Old men drank it. Soldiers drank it before battle. Poets drank it to feel inspired. Wine wasn't optional. It was... Of course, it wasn't just any wine. Greek wine had a reputation for being strong, even too strong. That's why mixing it with water wasn't just culture, it was survival. Straight wine could knock you out faster than a Spartan punch, and the Greeks were very clear about this. If you didn't dilute your wine, you weren't just a drunk, you were uncivilized. Imagine being at a party and someone saying, "Look at that guy, drinking it straight like a Thracian." That was basically the ultimate insult. Now, here's the fun part. They had a whole philosophy about how strong the wine should be. Some people said 3 parts water, 1 part wine was perfect. Others preferred 5-to-1. The goal was balance. Enough to relax you, not enough to make you dance naked on the table. But Of course, balance rarely lasted. By the third or fourth crater, people forgot the rules. And speaking of wine, the Greeks weren't subtle about how much they loved it. They even had a god for it, Dionysus. He wasn't some boring harvest deity who just made grapes grow. No, Dionysus was the god of wine, theater, madness, and ecstasy. Basically, the divine patron of bad decisions. If you woke up after a festival not remembering what happened, Dionysus was probably the reason. Festivals in his honor were not small affairs. They included parades, music, drinking competitions, and plays. Imagine thousands of people filling the streets, singing songs, pouring wine, wearing masks, and sometimes, just to spice things up, dressing like satyrs, those mischievous goatmen. These weren't polite processions. They were loud, chaotic, and often scandalous. In some festivals, women called maenads went into the mountains to dance wildly and, according to rumors, tear animals apart with their bare hands. That's not a music festival, that's a horror movie. Here's the key. Greeks didn't think of wine as just a way to get tipsy. They thought it was a doorway to truth. A little wine could loosen your tongue, free your mind, and let you say things you'd never dare to say sober. The poet Alcaeus once wrote that wine was the mirror of the soul, which sounds deep until you realize he was probably holding a half-empty cup when he said it. And wine wasn't only for the elite. Even farmers and peasants drank it daily. They couldn't afford the finest vintage, of course, but they had their own rustic wines. Soldiers on campaign often carried dried grapes to make wine on the go. Imagine marching for miles, setting up camp, and the first order of business is, "All right, boys, let's make some wine." Now, you might think, didn't this make them drunk all the time? Surprisingly, not always, because the wine was usually watered down, and people were used to drinking it with meals. But still, mistakes happened. Archaeologists have found Greek drinking cups shaped like animals: rams, horses, even pigs. The catch? You had to tilt them in a weird way to drink, or else spill wine all over yourself. Which raises the question, did they design cups just to laugh at drunk people? And we can't forget about the politics of wine. In Athens, many public decisions were made after symposia. So technically, democracy might have been fueled by half-drunk citizens who'd just left a wine-soaked debate. Picture it, well, I'll decide once this hangover clears. But it wasn't all fun. Wine had its dark side too. Some Greek doctors warned about the dangers of drinking too much. One doctor, Hippocrates, yes, the father of medicine, wrote that wine was good in moderation but dangerous in excess. Basically, he was the ancient version of a health blogger saying, red wine has antioxidants, but don't drink the whole bottle. Did people listen? And here's a fascinating twist. Wine wasn't just for drinking. Greeks used it in religion, medicine, even cooking. They poured wine on altars as offerings to the gods. They mixed it with herbs to heal wounds. Some even believed it could cure fevers. Which means, if you had a headache, the prescription was often more wine. But what about the kids? Believe it or not, Greek children drank diluted wine too. Parents thought it was normal. No one batted an eye if a 10-year-old had a watered-down cup at dinner. To us, that sounds wild. To them, it was simply healthy. Safer than drinking straight water. Ancient parenting tip. Don't forget little Timmy's wine water mix before bed. All this makes you wonder, if wine was so central, how did people even function? The answer is lots of practice. Drinking was a skill. Respectable men were supposed to hold their wine well, not get sloppy, which is why Socrates earned so much respect for being able to drink all night without losing control. That wasn't just impressive, it was practically heroic. But let's be honest, not everyone was Socrates. Plenty of Greeks drank too much, said the wrong thing, or passed out at the wrong time. And sometimes drunkenness wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. Wars, scandals, and even crimes were linked to overindulgence, which goes to show, if wine was their energy drink, it also occasionally blew up in their faces. Still, the Greeks loved it too much to stop. Wine was in their poetry, their religion, their medicine, their politics. It flowed through every part of their lives. Without it, Greek culture would have looked completely different. Maybe philosophy wouldn't, maybe theater wouldn't exist. Maybe democracy itself wouldn't exist. So yes, wine was their energy drink, but also their glue. It held society together, and sometimes it ripped it apart. Picture Athens, the city that bragged about inventing democracy, philosophy, and gym memberships with way too much nudity, but behind all those statues of buff dudes throwing discs, there was another kind of power running the show. Sex workers. And no, not just the ones hanging out in shady alleyways. Ancient Athens had a whole spectrum of sex work, from bargain bin quickies to luxury escorts that could outshine modern Instagram influencers. The Greeks even had categories for them. At the bottom you had the Pornai, the budget-friendly workers, often owned by pimps or brothel keepers. Think of them as the equivalent of the city's fast food option. Quick, cheap, not exactly a fine dining experience, but hey, they got the job done. Then, at the top of the ladder, you had the Hetairai, the high-class courtesans. These women were expensive, glamorous, and terrifyingly... Imagine if Beyonce, Kim Kardashian, and a philosophy professor had a baby and then decided to charge rich old men by the hour. That was a Hetairai. They didn't just sell sex, they sold conversation, companionship, and the illusion that the richest, most powerful men in Athens were actually interesting to talk to. Spoiler, they weren't. One of the most famous was Aspasia, who basically became a celebrity for being smarter and sharper than half the philosophers in Athens. She was the partner of Pericles, the guy who ran Athens at its peak, and people gossiped about her constantly. Some called her a whore, others said she secretly controlled the government. Either way, it's hilarious that a sex worker was accused of having more political influence than most actual politicians, which, knowing politicians, makes sense. But let's not get too classy here. The Greeks were equal opportunity degenerates. Brothels were state-owned businesses. That's right. Imagine if your government not only taxed brothels, but actually opened them like Starbucks franchises. Athens literally used the profits from sex work to fund public buildings, which means somewhere out there, a guy once visited a brothel and unintentionally helped pay for a temple. That's community service. And if you're wondering how public these places were, well, they weren't exactly discreet. Brothels were marked with little clay or stone signs shaped like "brace yourself," a penis. That's it. No neon lights. No gentleman's club in swirly letters. Just a stone carved into the shape of a dong nailed to the door. Honestly, efficient branding. You know exactly what you're getting. But here's the kicker. Athenian sex workers didn't just provide pleasure, they shaped culture. They inspired plays, songs, and gossip that we still talk about today. They were trendsetters in fashion, makeup, and scandal, and half the city's richest dudes were obsessed with them, even while pretending to be serious thinkers. Socrates might have been debating virtue, but you can bet someone in the audience was sneaking off for a study break. And here's where it gets spicy. While women in Athens were generally kept indoors, with almost no political rights, Hetairai had way more freedom. They could attend banquets, speak their minds, and roast men to their faces. In a weird twist, sex workers had more influence than respectable wives. Athenian men basically said, "We'll marry boring women to keep the house running, but we'll actually talk to the fun ones we pay." Romantic, right? So, to put it bluntly, the backbone of Athens wasn't just philosophers or warriors, it was the sex workers. They kept the economy buzzing, the politics messy, and the gossip columns juicy. Without them, the golden age of Athens might have looked a lot more beige. And if you think this is just a side note in history, imagine this. Some of the world's most famous ideas about politics and love were literally brainstormed in rooms full of wine, incense, and naked people. Plato's Symposium, a philosophical debate about love at a drinking party. And who do you think was probably serving the wine and tossing in witty one-liners? That's right, the sex workers. So next time you hear someone brag about Western civilization starting in Athens, just remember, it wasn't just democracy and statues of naked dudes. It was also brothels, Hetairai, and a whole lot of penis-shaped signs leading the way. Alright, so we've covered the sex. Now let's pour a drink, because the Greeks didn't do anything sober if they could help it. Wine in ancient Greece wasn't just a drink, it was practically a religion. Dionysus, the god of wine and chaos, was one of the most popular gods around. And when your favorite god is literally the patron of drunken orgies, you already know where this is going. Now, Greek wine wasn't your average table wine. It was strong, like knock you flat after 2 cups strong. But here's the twist. They thought it was barbaric to drink it straight, so they always mixed it with water. Imagine that. You show up to a party, ask for a cup, and the host is like, "Sure, but first let me add 3 scoops of sink water so you don't embarrass yourself." They called people who drank their wine neat, uncivilized. Which is hilarious, because this was the same crowd throwing naked orgies in the woods. Speaking of parties, let's talk about symposia. These were drinking parties where men and their favorite Hetairai lounged around on couches, downed cup after cup of wine, and tried to outwit each other with stories, songs, and jokes. It was half frat party, half TED talk, with occasional flute girls and streaking. Sometimes the fun game of the night was katabos, where you flung the dregs of your wine at a target, which is basically the ancient Greek version of beer pong. And yes, people absolutely hooked up at these parties. Imagine philosophers like Socrates and Aristophanes talking about the meaning of life while some guy in the corner was too drunk to stand, and another was trying to hit on a courtesan by reciting poetry. Peak culture. But it wasn't just wine. The Greeks had a whole pharmacy of substances. They burned opium at parties. They chewed herbs that worked as mild hallucinogens. They sniffed weird plant powders. Some historians even argue that the Oracle of Delphi, the famous priestess who told kings their futures, was basically high on volcanic fumes, which means a bunch of wars might have started because someone listened to a woman tripping on psychedelic gases. And then there were the Dionysian festivals. Imagine Mardi Gras, but with more nudity, goat sacrifices, and people running through the streets in masks, screaming at the top of their lungs. These festivals were wild enough that Roman historians later wrote about them like horrified moms watching a college spring break documentary. And the Greeks just shrugged like, yeah, that's a Tuesday. Oh, and let's not forget the food at these blowouts. People roasted whole animals, ate figs and honey by the handful, and sometimes got so drunk they puked, and then went back for round 2. There are ancient jokes about guys showing up with a vomit bucket, so they didn't miss a single refill. Not dedication. That's insanity with good catering. But here's the secret. Parties weren't just fun. They were politics in disguise. If you wanted to climb the social ladder in Athens, you didn't just give speeches, you threw the best drinking parties. A well-hosted symposium could win you allies, favors, even votes. So yeah, Athens, birthplace of democracy, was also birthplace of the networking party. Only instead of business cards, people exchanged poetry, gossip, and probably a venereal disease or two. And honestly, it worked. Some of the most famous ideas in Western history came out of these. Plato's Symposium, for example, is literally just a transcript of drunk guys sitting around talking about love, taking turns like it's an intellectual karaoke night. Which means your philosophy professor might have built an entire lecture series on the ancient equivalent of drunk texting. So, between the endless wine, the trippy herbs, and the sex workers who doubled as philosophers, Greek parties were less civilized elegance and more high-functioning chaos. And somehow, out of all that, they built a culture that shaped the world. Makes you wonder, were they brilliant despite all the partying, or brilliant because of it? If you thought human Greeks were messy, wait until you meet their gods. The Olympians were basically a divine reality TV show. They were powerful, immortal, and constantly horny. First up, Zeus, king of the gods. You'd think he'd be too busy running the universe to cause trouble, but no, Zeus spent most of his time turning into animals just to cheat on his wife. He became a swan, a bull, even a golden shower of light. Imagine explaining to your friend, "Yeah, I got pregnant by a swan last night." That's Greek mythology. His wife Hera was the goddess of marriage, But instead of fixing her marriage, she devoted her energy to making the lives of Zeus's mistresses miserable. If Zeus cheated, and he always did, Hera went full soap opera villain on the poor mortal or nymph who got caught in the crossfire. Honestly, she should have divorced him centuries earlier, but hey, ancient Greeks weren't great at modeling healthy relationships. Then you've got Aphrodite, the goddess of love. She had a husband, Hephaestus, the god of blacksmithing, but she wasn't exactly loyal. She hooked up with Ares, the god of war, and half the Olympians at one point or another. Hephaestus once caught her and Ares in bed together by trapping them in a golden net, then inviting the rest of the gods to come laugh at them. Imagine being humiliated in front of your entire immortal friend group. That's not divine, it's petty. And of course, Dionysus shows up again, the god of wine, parties, and losing your dignity in public. His followers, called Maenads, would run around the countryside in drunken frenzies, tearing animals apart with their bare hands, which sounds less like a holy ritual and more like a metal concert gone wrong. But here's the thing. These divine scandals weren't just bedtime stories. They shaped how people thought about the world. For the Greeks, the gods were basically exaggerated humans, flawed, dramatic, selfish, but also creative and powerful. They were role models. But in the way reality TV stars are role models, you know they're terrible, but you can't stop watching. And mortals, they weren't safe. If a god noticed you, your life got messy real fast. Take poor Leda, seduced by Zeus as a swan, or Europa, carried away by Zeus as a bull, or Ganymede, a handsome boy Zeus literally kidnapped to be his cupbearer on Olympus. Yeah, the king of the gods didn't exactly respect boundaries. Even heroes got dragged into divine scandals. Hercules, was famous for his strength, but half his troubles came from Hera hating him for being Zeus's illegitimate kid. Meanwhile, Achilles got divine upgrades, Odysseus got cursed by Poseidon, and poor Oedipus got the worst family drama in history. Don't even Google it before bed, it's not relaxing material. So when Greeks told these stories at festivals or symposia, it wasn't just entertainment, it was a way of saying, hey, if even the gods are this messy, maybe it's fine that my cousin owes me 2 goats and hasn't paid up. Basically divine justification for everyday nonsense. And honestly, that's kind of genius. Instead of inventing perfect, boring gods, the Greeks gave us characters so dramatic they made Game of Thrones look tame. So after all this partying, drinking, and divine drama, you might wonder, how did Greece not collapse into one giant hangover? Strangely enough, all this chaos was their culture. Take the symposiums, those drinking parties where men debated politics, philosophy, and poetry while passing around wine and snacks. These weren't just frat parties with better furniture, they were the birthplace of ideas that shaped democracy, science, and philosophy. Imagine Aristotle dropping a lecture about ethics, while a flute girl plays in the corner and everyone's tipsy on watered-down wine. That's how Western thought began, messy but brilliant. Then there's sex work. In Athens, the Hetairai weren't just entertainers. They influenced politics, art, and even wars. They had financial independence most women could only dream of. Some philosophers even admitted they learned more from Hetairai than from their fellow scholars. Picture a politician getting all his clever arguments from his favorite escort, then pretending he thought of it himself. Classic. They weren't just bedtime gossip. They were morality plays, except the morals were usually don't mess with Zeus or maybe don't trust love too much. But those myths gave people a shared language. Everyone knew the story of Aphrodite and Ares, or Dionysus's wine-soaked followers. It was like having a collective set of memes before the internet existed. Even their drug and alcohol culture had a deeper side. Wine wasn't just for fun, it was a symbol of community, a way to connect humans to the divine. Hallucinogens and ecstatic rituals weren't fringe weirdness. They were seen as a way of touching the gods themselves. For the Greeks, a party could also be a prayer. Let's not forget war. Greek soldiers marched into battle with songs, sacrifices, and the belief that gods were watching. If you lost, you blamed the gods. If you won, you thanked them with Either way, the gods always got the credit. So here's the big twist. All that sex, wine, and wild storytelling wasn't extra to Greek life, it was the foundation. The Greeks lived in extremes. They could write the rules of logic one day and then sacrifice a goat to a partying wine god the next. They could build the Parthenon while also gossiping about Zeus's latest affair. And maybe that's why ancient Greece still feels weirdly relatable, because deep down humans haven't changed that much. We still worship celebrities like gods, still mix wisdom with nonsense at parties, and still tell messy stories about love, sex, and power. The difference is, today, it's all on social media. Back then, it was carved into stone, painted on pottery, and whispered at festivals under the stars. So the next time someone says ancient Greece was the cradle of civilization, remember, it was also the cradle of divine cheating scandals, toga parties, and high-functioning chaos. And somehow that mix of brilliance and messiness shaped the world we live in today.
Time to weigh 60 pounds of steel, prepare for awkward ceremonies, and maybe, just maybe, die for a king who probably doesn't know your name. So, before you get comfy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of medieval madness. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always wild to see who's joining from across the globe. Imagine now, you're not in your bed, not in your room. Instead, you are standing in a stone chamber, wrapped in the thick scent of aged wood and melted wax. There is a fire crackling gently nearby, its warmth flickering across the carved walls. Outside, a breeze hums against the tower window, and you can just barely hear the hoot of an owl somewhere in the dark. Tonight, you are no ordinary dreamer. Tonight, you are becoming a knight. But don't worry, you don't need to do anything strenuous. Not yet. Just stay here, breathe softly. Let the story guide you. Our story today begins in a small, drafty chapel just before dawn. The stone beneath your boots is cold, even through thick wool. Your knees ache from kneeling too long, and you're pretty sure the tunic you're wearing hasn't been washed since someone else's ceremony. It smells like mead, rosemary, and the deep, crusty funk of noble ambition. You haven't slept. That was part of the ritual. Knights must stay up all night before their dubbing, cloaked in prayer and purification, which really just means you've been awkwardly kneeling in silence for hours while your back cramps into the shape of a medieval coat rack. The priest has mumbled the same chant 3 times now. You don't remember the words, only that they seem to have the power to summon sleep, which is not ideal during a holy vigil, but perfect for this moment. So let them echo faintly in your imagination, slow, low, rising and falling like waves over old stone. You glance up, and through the stained glass window, you can just see the horizon turning silver. That's your cue. Morning. Time to die for someone else's crown. Just kidding. Mostly. The chamber doors creak open, pushed by 2 very sleepy squires. You're one of them, technically. but as of about an hour from now, you'll be slightly more important. A knight, a man of status, a wearer of very heavy metal, and a deliverer of legally sanctioned violence, depending on who's paying. You were helped to your feet by someone who definitely didn't help you last week when you slipped in the latrine. Amazing what status does. Your legs wobble slightly, but you manage to stand upright. That's the first challenge passed. Sort of. Now comes the dressing. You're stripped of your vigil garments and handed layer upon layer of knightly attire. A padded gambeson first thick, quilted, awkward, then hose, breeches, a belt. Each item symbolizing something important, though no one remembers what. Your squire explains one of them might represent purity. You both laugh softly. It's early. Jokes are allowed. Then comes the chainmail. Ah yes, 60 pounds of tightly linked metal, slumped over your shoulders like a disapproving uncle. It takes 2 squires to drag it in, and a third to help lift your arms. You're already sweating, but not from the fire. No one tells you how loud chainmail is until you're wearing it. It jingles, clinks, and creaks like a walking bag of antique keys. A surcoat goes over that, embroidered with your soon-to-be coat of arms, which you spent way too long designing last week. It features a falcon, a spear, and a cup of something that might be wine or might be whatever passed for soup. Symbols of nobility, ferocity, and well hydration. Your sword is brought to you, resting on a velvet cushion. You don't get to wear it yet. That happens later. For now, you must carry it awkwardly like a toddler with a fancy stick. They led you out into the castle courtyard. The sun has begun to rise, casting a gentle gold over the grass and rooftops. Birds stir lazily in the ivy. Horses not in the stables, clearly unimpressed. The breeze is soft but sharp. Autumn, crisp and cool enough to sting your cheeks, but fresh enough to feel like a clean page. It is here that you kneel once more. The lord of the castle, old and half drunk, steps forward. He holds the flat of a sword in both hands and taps you on each shoulder. It's symbolic, but still kind of stressful when the blade is real and he is definitely squinting from last night as me. He says your name, or something close to it. Then he says, "Arise, sir," and the rest is lost to applause. You stand, you wobble slightly. You remember to smile. Congratulations, you're now a knight, sworn to protect the innocent, or at least the people who can afford your services. The feast will happen tonight. There will be music, pour too much wine, and someone will absolutely try to duel you over a card game. But for now, you are ushered back to your small stone chamber to rest before your first assignment. You collapse into the straw mattress like a collapsing medieval economy. Your armor is removed piece by piece, noisily, until you're in nothing but your shift. Your body aches in strange places. Your arms feel heavier than usual. Your chest hums with exhaustion. But something else too. Pride, maybe. Dread, definitely. Comfort, surprisingly. Yes, you've made it. For now, just breathe. And hey, if you're enjoying this soft medieval misery, consider liking and subscribing, so we can keep feeding your brain with historically accurate exhaustion. Leave a comment with your favorite obscure torture device or unsanitary profession. We love community engagement. Now close your eyes. Let the morning fade. The castle walls are thick, and no one expects you until evening. Sleep, Sir Knight. Sleep like a rock in a drawbridge. The wind has changed. It sweeps softly through the narrow stone window, carrying with it the smell of hay, bread, and the damp musk of mowed water. Somewhere in the courtyard below, a blacksmith's hammer rings faintly, its rhythm steady and hypnotic. Clink, pause, clink, again. You're still lying on the straw mattress, curled sideways like a well-cooked sausage, when the knock comes. 3 polite taps, a face peeks in. Your new title feels like a joke someone forgot to stop telling. The boy bows clumsily. Your first duty awaits, my lord. You blink at him, groggy. Does it involve buying? No, sir. Geese. Well, a goose. Mostly escorting it. Right. Naturally. You rise, groaning quietly as you reach for your garments. A knight's life, you recall, is made up of honor, discipline, and minor errands that probably should require a human-shaped tin can. Still, you dress. Slowly, the gambeson hugs your torso like a warm, angry cousin. You forego the full chainmail this time today as assignment. Doesn't he seem like a death in battle sort of affair? Instead, you strap on your sword, grab your leather gloves, and prepare to face your destiny, which, as it turns out, is a goose named Matilda. She waits for you in the stables, beady-eyed and fluffed with purpose. She belongs to the lady of the manor, a beloved pet, a bringer of luck, and allegedly, a creature with very strong opinions about bread. Matilda is to be delivered to the abbey, your squire explains. She's being blessed. You stare at the goose. The goose stares back. The journey will take 3 hours on foot. Longer if Matilda decides to assert herself. Which, of course, she does. Repeatedly. Within 10 minutes of leaving the castle, she has stopped 6 times to honk at butterflies and once to chase a beetle for what seemed like revenge. But the countryside is beautiful. The path winds gently through golden fields and quiet woods. Oak trees arch overhead like watchful grandparents. The sun filters through the leaves in warm patches. Birds whistle sleepily in the canopy. The air smells of crushed grass and distant rain. You walk slowly, the breeze brushing against your neck like a whispered lullaby. Matilda waddles ahead, surprisingly regal. You, a fully anointed knight, follow her like an unpaid servant. And then you hear it, rustling. Off the path, a low grunt, a sharp snap of twigs. You pause, hand drifting instinctively to the hilt of your sword. Matilda freezes, then lets out a warning honk so loud it startles a crow out of a nearby tree. From the underbrush stumbles a figure. A man, not covered, possibly drunk, possibly highwayman. He sees the goose. Then he sees you. Then he smiles. Nice bird, he slurs. You unsheathe your sword with what you hope is knightly authority. This goose is under noble protection. The man blinks. Right. Matilda honks again, louder this time. The stranger, who clearly knows when he's outmatched by both steel and poultry, stumbles back into the woods and disappears. No bloodshed, no duel, no heroic ballads, just goose-based diplomacy. You breathe out slowly. The path continues. The sun climbs higher, warm on your back. The world feels calm again, like the inside of a monastery after Vespers. The birds have resumed their gentle chorus. The trees sway with a rhythm that could lull any soul to sleep. Matilda eventually tires and lets you carry her under one arm like a squirmy bag of feathers. You hum softly, an old marching tune from your training days. The rhythm of your boots, the sway of the road, the whisper of wind, it all blends together. Quiet, peaceful. You reach the abbey just before noon. The monks are waiting. They greet you with low bows and reverent smiles, not for you, of course, but for the goose. One even cries a little. He says something about divine feathers, and you decide not to ask. Matilda is received with full honors. A bell is rung. A blessing is mumbled. Bread is offered. She accepts. You are dismissed. Your job is done. You begin the walk back, lighter without the goose, but still carrying the story. A strange one, but you get the feeling many knightly tales are going to be like this, confusing, mildly dangerous, oddly profound. The wind shifts again, brushing through the trees. The sky turns from blue to gold to soft lilac. Shadows stretch along the road. Somewhere in the woods, a stream babbles its endless lullaby. Your feet find the rhythm again, step by step, thought by thought. And if you're still awake, yes, go ahead and like and subscribe. It's the chivalrous thing to do. Leave a comment below with your favorite medieval livestock emergency. The castle is quieter than usual this morning. The kind of quiet that feels padded, like a thick wool cloak wrapped around stone. Birds kiss softly from the high windows. Somewhere, water drips into a basin. Even the servants seem to walk slower, their footsteps muffled on the old rush-covered floors. You're in the training yard now. Well, you're standing in it, staring at a sword that's slightly too long, slightly too sharp, and very clearly forged to be used by someone taller, stronger, and born with fewer complaints in the knees. The master at arms, a weathered man named Odio, is watching you with the same expression one might use for a bucket that leaks from the bottom. So, he says, you've been knighted. Congratulations. That means you're now legally allowed to die in more prestigious ways. You nod solemnly. He gestures to the practice dummy. Let's see how much you remember from your training. Sword up, you lift it, slowly, dramatically, like an actor pretending to be heroic. Except your arm starts shaking after 3 seconds and your elbow makes a popping sound. Odio sighs, loudly. The first swing you attempt glances at the dummy's helmet and sends your shoulder into a small, spiraling crisis. The second swing hits nothing. The third one lands squarely in the dummy's burlap thigh, which technically counts as progress. You fight, Odio mutters. Like a bored goose. You pause. I scored a goose yesterday. I can tell. The lesson goes on for what feels like an eternity. You're taught again how to angle your blade, how to position your stance, how not to fall face first when someone lightly pushes your shield. But it's not all bad. Between the wheezing and the aching, there are moments. Moments when the sword hums through the air just right. When your footwork actually feels like dancing. When the cold steel in your palm reminds you that yes, you are a knight now. Not a great one. Not yet. But one all the same. The sun climbs higher, bathing the training yard in gentle warmth. You're sweating, breathing hard, but alive. You collapse onto a bench beside the well. A breeze flutters your tunic, drying your face. The scent of rosemary and distant baking bread wafts from the kitchens. You hear the gentle clang of metal being hammered in the forge, the soft rustle of the trees beyond the curtain wall, and somewhere in the distance, that goose again. Matilda, still here, still judging. You smile, eyes half-lidded. Odio tosses a water skin your way. Rest while you can, Sir Knight. Your next assignment's being planned. You raise an eyebrow. More livestock? He chuckles. Worse. Diplomacy. Ah, yes. A knight's life is full of terrors. You lean back, eyes drifting up to the cloud-dappled sky. You trace the slow swirl of white on blue. Your fingers twitch slightly with the muscle memory of the sword. You still ache, but not in a bad way. More like a reminder of motion, of purpose. The yard around you begins to empty. The squires take the practice dummies back into the storage room. The dogs that had been sleeping in the shade stretch and wander off toward the kitchens in search of scraps. The shadows grow long, softening the edges of everything. The bench you're on is smooth from centuries of use. Generations of knights, squires, tired soldiers just like you have sat here. Thinking, breathing, resting. And now it's your turn. There's something comforting about that. The continuity, the stillness between the moments of chaos. You let your shoulders sink. You breathe in the warm air, laced with the smell of sun-baked stone. You feel a kind of drowsy pride settle over you, heavier than armor, but more pleasant. You made it through sword practice. You didn't lose a limb. Odio only insulted you 5 times. A new record. The breeze shifts. A servant boy walks by with a basket of apples. He offers you one. You bite into it. Crisp, cold, perfectly sweet. This is the part of knighthood they don't write poems about. The sitting, the thinking, the letting go of every sharp edge in your mind. And maybe that's the most noble thing of all. If your eyes are still open, consider letting them flutter shut. No one's asking anything of you right now. There are no swords to lift, no scrolls to sign, no geese to babysit. Just this moment, this breath, this bench beneath you, this sky above. If you are still awake, and good on you. If you are, go ahead and tap that like button the way you tap that dummy ass thigh. Leave a comment about how sore your imaginary medieval joints are, or what kind of knight you think you'd be. And now, rest. You'll need your strength, because your first diplomatic mission, it starts tomorrow, and it involves French cheese. But for now, sleep, Sir Knight. Sleep like a broken training dummy, forgotten in the shade. The morning starts too early. Birdsong drips through the tower window like honey slow.
golden, and unwelcome.
Somewhere downstairs, a lute is being tuned badly. You're pretty sure the minstrel only knows 3 songs, and 2 of them are just louder versions of the first. Still, the breeze is soft. Your blankets are heavy. The straw mattress cradles your sore limbs like an old friend who smells a bit like goat. You could stay here.
You really could, but then there's a knock.
You groan.
You know that knock.
It's the knock of a squire who thinks he's delivering good news. Sir Knight, the voice chirps. Wait a chipper. You've been selected for a most esteemed diplomatic task. You sit up.
Is it dangerous?
No, sir.
It's cheese related. You pause.
That's not a no. Half an hour later, you're dressed, mounted, and wondering how your life has come to this.
You, a recently dubbed knight, sworn to uphold justice, defend the innocent, and apparently deliver dairy to a rival lord.
The situation, as explained by the steward, is delicate. The neighboring baron, French, naturally is fond of rare English cheese.
A recent batch from your manor's cows has caused
Issues: soft texture,
unusual aroma,
a slight tendency to hiss when cut. Your task: escort the cheese.
explain it, defend its honor.
You are, in every way that matters, a cheese diplomat. The cart creaks beneath the weight of the wheels of cheese round, sweating quietly in the morning sun. You ride beside it, trying to look noble and not entirely embarrassed.
The monk rides ahead of you, head bowed, muttering something that may be a prayer or may be a complaint.
This cheese, the monk says eventually, was blessed by accident.
During Lent, it now holds dual status as both sinful and sacred. You nod slowly.
That tracks. The road winds gently through rolling hills, under arching trees that dance in the breeze like drowsy dancers. Bees drift lazily past. Your horse plods forward, rhythm steady and soothing.
The cart creaks. The cheese sweats.
The monk hums. It's oddly peaceful until the smell hits.
At first, it's subtle, a faint tang in the air, then stronger, richer.
Like boiled cabbage wrapped in old wool and left in the sun.
You glance down. The cheese is foaming slightly.
Is it supposed to do that? You ask. The monk glances back.
Oh yes.
It's developing character. You do not find this reassuring. By the time you reach the neighboring manor, the cheese has developed so much character it might qualify for its own title.
The guards at the gate wave you through quickly, probably just to get the smell of their hands.
The baron greets you in his hall, a narrow man with suspicious eyes and a pointed moustache. He examines the cheese, sniffs it dramatically, and frowns. This, he says slowly, smells like treason. You clear your throat and launch into your rehearsed speech, full of noble intentions and dairy vocabulary. You explain the cows, the climate, the religious implications. The monk hums in agreement and adds a note about edible penance. The baron listens. He sniffs again.
He stares at the cheese. Then, in a moment of deeply unsettling bravery, he slices into it and takes a bite. Silence. Everyone waits.
Then he says softly, this is terrible,
but bold. You nod solemnly.
Much like our people, he chews slowly. It tastes like defiance.
And old shoes. You allow yourself a small smile.
The best ones do. There is a long pause. Then, suddenly he laughs.
A big, unexpected, belly-deep laugh.
You English, he says, are mad. You nod again. Correct. The deal is sealed.
The cheese, in all its terrible glory, is accepted. Peace is preserved.
Trade relations remain intact.
You are offered a small glass of wine, which you down in one gulp.
The monk is offered nothing, but seems content to leave with several mold samples wrapped in cloth, possibly for further study, possibly to unleash upon another unsuspecting monastery. The ride home is quieter. The breeze is cool. The road is soft beneath your horse's hooves. The smell lingers faintly in your cloak, but you're too tired to care. You did it. You survived your first real diplomatic mission. No duels, no bloodshed, no embarrassing treaties signed in the wrong name. Just a lot of cheese and one baron who now thinks you're clinically insane, which, honestly, might be to your advantage later. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in soft gold and amber. The air grows cooler.
Your limbs ache in the pleasant way they do after a long walk, and a job well done.
You dismount at the castle stables and hand of your reins. The squire bows. The monk waves goodbye.
The cart is left to air out overnight.
You, noble cheese courier, return to your chamber.
You remove your belt.
Your boots. Your tunic. You collapse into bed. The straw crunches softly beneath you. The evening wind sings through the stone window. Call against your face.
Somewhere, an owl calls. Somewhere else, Matilda honks.
Maybe in your honor, your eyes grow heavy. Sleep pulls at your limbs. And if you're still conscious, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave a comment about your favorite dairy-based political scandal.
Every night deserves a little recognition. But now, sleep.
Sleep like a wheel of blessed, misunderstood cheese wrapped in cloth, hidden in a cellar, quietly fermenting into greatness. The morning fog rolls in thick and lazy.
It wraps around the towers like a wool blanket, clings to the ivy, and dampens every footstep in the castle courtyard.
Your breath clouds gently in the air as you sit on a cold stone bench, slowly chewing on a hunk of black bread. You think it might be yesterday's or last week's. It tastes like survival. You are not expecting company, certainly not a baron.
But here he comes, boots heavy, beard thick, cloak unnecessarily dramatic. Baron Osric of Harthridge, your lord's cousin, and, depending on the day, a man of either tremendous vision or tremendous confusion.
Sir Knight, he bellows, despite standing 3 feet from you. You led the maneuvers today.
You pause mid-chew.
The what now?
He claps you on the back hard enough to knock breadcrumbs out of your mouth.
Mock battle, 2 sides,
Wooden swords,
mud,
glory, all that. You blink.
Have I been trained in this? Of course not, he says cheerfully.
But you look like someone with instincts. You do not feel like someone with instincts. You feel like someone with indigestion and a sword that squeaks when it rains.
Still, within the hour, you are standing in the lower field, helmet on, commanding a platoon of 10 half-dressed squires and one one-eyed cook with a ladle. Across the field, Baron Osric stands dramatically at the front of his own squad, mostly stable hands and 2 surprisingly aggressive goats.
Rules are simple.
He shouts.
No stabbing, no crying. First to steal the other team's flag wins. The horn sounds.
Chaos erupts.
Your squires charge, waving sticks and yelling things that sound vaguely heroic.
The cook swings his ladle with shocking efficiency.
You try to shout something strategic, but immediately swallow a mouthful of fog and start coughing.
On the other side, Osric's goats break formation and charge sideways into a bush. A stable hand loses his shoe.
Someone in your unit yells, form the wedge, which you rate pretty sure is a dinner instruction. But it somehow works.
You stagger forward, sword raised, armor clanking, trying to remember any tactical advice you've ever heard that wasn't he yelled sarcastically during training. But the world slows down for a moment. The fog curls around everyone like a curtain. The ground beneath your boots is soft, damp, almost springy. The smell of fresh earth, trampled grass, and the unique medieval musk of man who has bathed in 3 days fills the air.
And you feel it.
Not clarity exactly,
but momentum.
Purpose, your instinct, those mysterious things Baron Osric trusted. Kick in at last.
You point to a rise in the field.
Circle left.
Send 2 around the back.
The squires look confused,
but do it anyway. You move like you mean it, even if you don't know what it is. And it works. 10 minutes later, Osric is covered in mud. Your team has the flag, and the cook is sitting on one of the goats, humming a war chant.
Victory.
Baron Osric approaches, panting, bleeding slightly from the shin, and grinning like a lunatic.
Brilliant. You, Sir Knight, are a natural commander.
He hugs you. It's unexpected. It's muddy.
It smells like beef and glory. You stand awkwardly, arms slightly raised. I'm sure if this is standard noble behavior or the result of mild concussion. Either way, it's done.
That evening, there's a celebration of sorts.
Bread is broken.
Ale is passed around. Stories of your tactical brilliance are retold with increasing exaggeration. At some point, someone insists on calling you the Fort General, which sounds far more mysterious than it is.
You sit near the hearth, warm and sore and full of something that feels suspiciously like pride.
Outside, the stars begin to prick through the velvet sky.
A breeze dances down the chimney, fluttering the candle flames.
The fire crackles.
Boots dry near the hearth. The smell of wood smoke wraps around you like a lullaby.
You lean back, eyes closing softly. Every muscle aches, but pleasantly.
Your hands are scraped. Your hair is full of mud, and yet there's a smile at the edge of your mouth.
You were trusted.
You acted. You won. And the goat lived.
The castle quiets as the evening deepens.
Chatter softens into murmurs.
Laughter fades into the low hum of tired voices.
Even Baron Osric, once booming, now snores gently somewhere across the hall. You breathe in. You breathe out.
The fire sighs.
The wind rustles the banners.
And your eyes begin to close.
If you are still awake, and bless you if you are, consider liking, subscribing, or leaving a comment about your most ridiculous victory. Bonus points if it involved goats, fork, or impromptu titles. But now, let the noise drift away. Let the victory settle in your bones. Let the world grow quiet. Sleep, Fort General. Sleep like a victorious field commander with hay in his armor and nothing to prove.
The castle always sounds different at night.
By day, it's full of chatter and clatter, hooves on stone, buckets clanging, someone yelling about eggs in the kitchen.
But when the sun sets and the candles burn low, the silence settles like dust.
And dust, you've noticed, moves in strange ways after dark.
You're lying in bed, half asleep, one boot still on, because you couldn't quite muster the energy to remove it. The fire is down to glowing coals.
The shadows are long and soft. The wind has calmed. The air smells faintly of beeswax and the wool blanket that refuses to cover your toes. Then you hear it. Not a crash, not a moan. Just
Footsteps.
slow,
Deliberate.
far too rhythmic to be a rat.
And definitely not Matilda the goose. Her style is more stompy and indignant. No, these footsteps echo through the east hallway, the one lined with faded tapestries and the occasional rumor.
You sigh. It's probably nothing.
You close your eyes again.
And then something knocks. Not at your door, at the wall,
3 soft taps.
right where your head rests. You sit up. It's late. You're tired. You're still wearing one boot.
This is not how you imagine knighthood.
Wrapping your cloak around your shoulders, you light a candle. The flame flickers, nervous and small.
The air in the hallway feels
Cooler? Just slightly. The tapestries barely move, but there's a strange weight to the silence.
You walk slowly, your candle painting golden shapes across the stone.
And then you see it, a single boot, sitting in the middle of the hallway, your other boot, the one you definitely left near your bed. You bend down,
Pick it up.
it's warm, as if recently worn.
A polite haunting then. You glance around. Thanks. You whisper.
Nothing, just the quiet creak of rafters settling and a breeze that smells faintly of lavender. Or
Maybe rosemary.
there's a small door at the end of the hallway. You've never opened it before. No one really talks about it.
Probably because it opens with the loudest squeal you've ever heard.
Ancient hinges, very dramatic.
Inside is a tiny room.
Just stone walls, a bench, and a single small window looking out over the darkened fields.
And in the corner, a faded tapestry. It's not like the others. This one shows a woman in a blue cloak, standing beside a knight with no face.
Not that it's blank, it's just unfinished, worn away, like someone erased him.
You study it, candle flickering. Something about the scene is strangely comforting.
Calm, the figures are close, companionable. The stitching is rough, but gentle. And then, from behind the wall you hear humming, soft, low.
A woman's voice.
You don't run,
You sit,
on the bench.
because it doesn't feel like danger.
It feels like company, like someone once stood here often, watching the hills beyond the castle, maybe waiting for someone who never came home.
You hum back.
Just a note, tentative. The humming stops.
A breeze stirs. Your candle goes out.
Silence, but not an empty one.
A peaceful one. When you return to your room, the fire has rekindled itself slightly.
The blanket that had slipped to the floor is back on your bed. Both boots are neatly placed beside your chair, and on the table,
A lavender sachet.
you blink.
You smile.
You lie down. The blanket is warmer now,
The room's softer.
the darkness kind.
Sleep doesn't just come, it welcomes you like an old friend. As your breathing slows, you let yourself wonder who she was. The ghost, if ghost she is.
A noblewoman,
A seamstress,
a bard who stayed behind,
or just someone who couldn't leave until someone like you said hello.
and maybe, just maybe, she liked your humming. If you're still awake, and bless you if you are, go ahead and like and subscribe before the ghost decides to rearrange your shoes. Drop a comment with your favorite type of haunting. Passive aggressive, lavender scented, boot returning, but for now, let your thoughts drift like candle smoke. The castle is quiet. The spirits are gentle, and your bed is waiting.
Sleep, peaceful night.
Sleep like a whisper behind a tapestry. Let the morning mist roll over your thoughts.
Soft hooves on dew-wet grass.
Distant trumpets, a crowd already gathering, their yawns as loud as their cheers.
You rise with a yawn of your own, already aching from dreams of metal armor and absurdly heavy helmets. The sun is still low, caught behind gauzy clouds, but it's joust day, and everyone seems far too enthusiastic for something that involves being violently hit with a tree.
Your squire, bless his optimistic little heart, has already laid out your gear.
It looks exactly like it did yesterday. Horrifying.
The helmet alone could double as a cauldron. The chest plate,
Shiny and ridiculous.
your arms still haven't recovered from just lifting it yesterday.
Sir Knight, your squire says, far too chipper. You're up second.
You mumble something back, probably a word, possibly a prayer. Outside, the list field is surrounded by wooden stands.
Nobles, peasants, merchants, they all want a front row seat to watch armored men slam into each other like disoriented cows. A minstrel tunes his lute, practicing a verse that rhymes valor with gall. Someone's already selling pies,
And you're pacing.
trying not to throw up.
Fun fact, medieval knights were expected to train constantly swordplay, horsemanship, archery, the works. But the joust, that was theatre. Political theatre, to be specific. Showing of your family's power by casually surviving blunt trauma in front of nobles.
You're told your opponent today is Sir Godfrey of Eastmere. He's graceful in the saddle, swift as a falcon, and once broke a man's ribcage through full plate. So,
That's encouraging.
they begin strapping you into your armor,
One layer, then another,
then the gorget, then the breastplate, then greaves.
then gauntlets.
You are no longer a person. You are a tin can with dreams. Your horse, a dignified creature named Geoffrey unrelated to Sir Godfrey, probably, waits with saintly patience as they hoist you into the saddle using a winch. You sit there, swaying slightly, like a pudding in a cup.
The crowd hushes, trumpets blare.
A herald with wild hand gestures announces your name, which gets 3 polite claps and 1 goose honk, probably Matilda.
You lower your visor, and just like that,
The world goes narrow. All you see is the tilt, a long wooden divider, and Sir Godfrey thundering toward you. Lance aims squarely at your general torso region.
you remember to aim yours, sort of.
Mostly it's just holding on and hoping.
Then, crash.
It's a sound like thunder, like oak splitting under pressure, like every piece of your dignity being flung into the sky at once.
You're on the ground, not dead.
But very horizontal. A soft breeze ruffles the grass beside your cheek. Somewhere, the goose honks again.
Your visor creaks open. Your squire is there, red in the face, panicking.
You were so close.
He lies kindly.
You almost hit his knee. Sir Godfrey trots over, removes his helmet.
He has the audacity to look flawless.
His blonde hair flows like a tapestry, and he smells faintly of mint.
Good tilt, he says, offering a hand. You nod, with great effort. You extend your gauntlet and he helps you up. And to your surprise,
The crowd cheers. Because here's the thing, in medieval times, jousting wasn't always about winning.
It was about showing up.
Taking the hit, rising again with a broken lance and a dumb grin. You wobble of the field, someone hands you a meat pie.
You cannot feel your fingers.
You take a bite anyway. Later that evening, you'll have a bruise the size of Normandy. But tonight, you'll be a little famous, and that's enough.
If your eyes are still open, gently float them closed. Imagine the crowd drifting away, the sun lowering behind distant oaks, and the soft murmurs of stable hands brushing horses clean.
Let the ache in your imaginary ribs melt into the mattress beneath you. And if you're still awake, don't forget to like and subscribe. Unless you want to be volunteered for next week's melee, leave a comment telling us your night name.
Bonus points if it includes the slightly dazed. Now rest, brave sir you. You survived the joust. Sleep gently, and try not to dream of helmets. The great hall shimmers softly in the flickering candlelight. Heavy tapestries drape the stone walls, muffling footsteps and gossip alike.
The air is thick with the scent of roasted meats, spilled ale, and something faintly sweet, perhaps honeyed bread, or the nervous sweat of nervous nobles. You enter, still a bit wobbly from yesterday's joust. Your armor traded for fine but unfamiliar clothes that itch at the collar and pinch the wrists. Your hands tremble slightly, not from nerves, but from the sudden absence of that comforting weight of steel. The room buzzes with laughter, whispers, and the clinking of goblets.
Lords and ladies sit perched on long benches, eyes bright with anticipation.
Musicians tune their lutes, the strings quivering softly in the quiet. You're ushered to a seat near the high table, beside the lord and lady of the castle.
The steward gives you a look that clearly says, "Try not to embarrass us." You nod, silently promising to do your best.
The feast begins. Plates heaped with roasted fowl, steaming vegetables, and piles of fragrant herbs. The warmth of the fire spills over everyone, casting golden shadows and softening the edges of the evening.
You try to keep your head low, to sip your wine without making a spectacle.
But then, a nobleman, known for his sharp tongue and love of practical jokes, challenges you to a riddle contest. You don't know any riddles.
Instead, you tell a story about the goose, the cheese, the joust, the boots that walk themselves.
Your voice is soft, even, and soon others lean in to listen.
Your tale is clumsy, full of pauses and stutters, but it's honest and strangely charming.
Laughter bubbles up around the hall.
Not cruel laughter.
Warm, light laughter that feels like a shared secret.
The Lord claps you on the back, smiling.
A night with humor rare and refreshing. A lady offers you a slice of sweet cake. You must tell us more, she says. As the evening deepens, you find yourself weaving more stories, each one softer and sillier than the last. Your words become a gentle rhythm, a lullaby of mishaps and triumphs, failures and small victories.
The musicians begin to play a slow tune. The hall grows quieter.
Eyes grow heavy. The fire crackles.
The wind sighs outside the tall windows. And you, once a clumsy knight burdened by armor and expectation, now feel lighter, free.
Sleep starts to pull at your lids, gentle as a feather falling.
If you're still awake, go ahead and like, subscribe, or leave a comment about your favorite awkward moment that turned into a triumph. Maybe you too are a night of laughter.
The castle is deep in slumber, draped in shadows and whispers. The halls are silent except for the occasional soft creak of settling stones and the distant sigh of the wind outside. The moon hangs low and gentle in the sky, its silver light filtering through stained glass and casting dancing patterns on the floor.
Ho, ho, ho!
You find yourself drawn to the old library, an ancient room tucked away in the castle's highest tower. The scent of aged parchment and polished wood greets you softly as you push open the heavy oak door. It swings with a quiet groan, revealing rows upon rows of books, scrolls, and dusty tomes waiting patiently for curious hands.
Ho, ho, ho!
Your footsteps are muffled on the thick rug as you wander between the shelves, The flicker of your candle casts warm, wavering light that plays hide-and-seek with the shadows. Here, time seems to slow, pages rustle in gentle whispers, and knowledge hums quietly beneath the stillness.
Ho, ho, ho!
Your fingers brush along leather-bound volumes until one catches your eye. It's small, wrapped in faded blue cloth, tied carefully with a silk ribbon. No title, no name. Curiosity nudges you to untie it. Inside, you discover a delicate manuscript filled with elegant script and hand-drawn illustrations of stars, strange machines, and mysterious symbols.
Ho, ho, ho!
This is no ordinary book. It is a guide to inventions, secrets of forgotten crafts, and the dreams of medieval minds reaching beyond their time. You read softly, imagining the scribes and scholars who poured their wonder into these pages. They dreamed of flying machines, water clocks that sang, and devices that could measure the passing of shadows.
Ho, ho, ho!
A gentle breeze wafts through the open window, carrying the scent of night jasmine and cool stone. The candlelight flickers, wrapping you in a cocoon of quiet warmth. You feel your eyelids growing heavy, lulled by the stories of ingenuity and the endless curiosity of those who came before. The book closes itself gently, as if satisfied you've read enough.
Ho, ho, ho!
You return the manuscript to its place, stepping back slowly. The library sighs, folding you softly into the quiet outside. The first light of dawn begins to tiptoe across the horizon, promising a new day filled with possibility. And you, night dreamer, explorer, can rest now. Sleep with the gentle hum of knowledge beneath you. Sleep like a secret, waiting to be discovered.
Ho, ho, ho!
If you're still awake, bless your patience. And do tap that like button, subscribe for more whispered journeys, and share your favorite forgotten invention in the comments. Now close your eyes. Let the night hold you softly.
Ho, ho, ho!
The castle is wrapped in stillness, draped in a cloak of twilight blue and silver moonbeams.
Torches flicker gently along the walls, their flames whispering secrets to the stones. The air is cool and soft, carrying the scent of damp earth and pine from the nearby forest. Inside your chamber, the weight of the day's armor has been shed, replaced by the light fabric of your nightshirt. Your sword rests by the door sharp, silent, waiting. Tonight, it's not a tool of war, but a quiet reminder of duty. You sit by the window, the faint glow of stars peeking through the curtains. A gentle breeze brushes your face, carrying with it the rustle of leaves and distant hoots of owls settling into their night.
Outside, the world seems to pause a breath held before the storm.
Your thoughts wander.
Faces of comrades,
The stories that brought you here, the long road of geese, cheese, jousts, and unexpected friendships.
the laughter and the quiet moments between chaos. You place a hand over your heart, feeling the steady beat beneath your palm. Courage isn't the absence of fear.
It's the soft strength that whispers to keep going, even when the night feels heavy.
The fire crackles low, sending gentle warmth through the room.
Shadows dance lazily on the walls, wrapping you in a calm embrace. You breathe deeply, inhaling the calm, exhaling the tension. The distant sound of a lute drifts up from the hall, playing a slow, soothing melody. The notes are like a lullaby sung by the past, carrying hope and peace. Your eyes grow heavy.
The world outside is silent now, holding its breath.
And you, night dreamer, guardian, can let go.
Sleep, wrapped in courage as soft as a whisper. Sleep, knowing the dawn will bring new light.
If you are still awake, give a gentle tap to like and subscribe, and leave a comment about what gives you courage in quiet moments. Now, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and drift gently into rest. The morning light filters softly through the lattice windows, casting gentle patterns of gold and green across the stone floor. Outside, the castle gardens are waking, a quiet sanctuary tucked behind high walls and ancient trees.
You step into the garden, the earth cool beneath your boots. The air is rich with the scent of blooming lavender, wild rosemary, and the delicate sweetness of morning glories climbing along the trellis.
The birds sing softly, their melodies weaving through the rustling leaves like a whispered secret. A gentle breeze stirs the petals, setting them adrift like fragile dreams. In the heart of the garden lies a small fountain, its waters murmuring a soothing song as they cascade over worn stones. The sound is like a heartbeat, steady, calming, eternal.
You find a stone bench nestled beneath a weeping willow, its branches hanging like silken curtains. Sitting down, you let your fingers trail through the cool moss growing there, feeling the soft pulse of life beneath your touch.
The garden holds stories of promises made and kept, of whispered hopes and quiet strength.
You imagine the knights and ladies who once wandered here, their footsteps light, their hearts full of dreams and doubts. As you breathe in the fragrant air, a sense of peace settles over you.
The world slows to the rhythm of the garden's gentle song, and your thoughts drift like petals on a stream.
You close your eyes, letting the warmth of the sun and the cool touch of the breeze lull you deeper into rest. Sleep now, cradled by the garden's embrace.
Sleep softly, like a secret whispered on the wind. If you're still awake, please tap like and subscribe, and share in the comments your favorite place to find calm and peace. Now, close your eyes and drift away.
The first light of dawn peeks softly over the horizon, painting the sky in gentle shades of pink and gold. The castle, wrapped in the quiet hush of early morning, breathes with the promise of a new day.
You stand atop the ramparts, the cool breeze brushing against your skin, carrying the scent of fresh dew and distant pine. Below, the world stretches wide and waking, fields shimmering with soft light and trees swaying gently.
The weight of your armor feels lighter now, as if the night has carried away yesterday's burdens.
Your sword rests at your side not as a symbol of duty alone, but as a companion on the journey ahead. Birds call softly in the distance, their songs weaving a melody of hope and renewal. The sun rises slowly, casting warm beams that touch every stone and leaf, every corner of the world waiting to be explored. You breathe deeply, feeling the steady rhythm of your heart and the quiet strength within.
The path of the night is never easy, but it is yours to walk step by steady step, breath by gentle breath. As the morning unfolds, you smile softly, knowing that every moment, every challenge, every trial, every quiet breath is a part of your story. Sleep now, knowing that tomorrow is a new beginning. Sleep gently, wrapped in the calm certainty of your own courage.
If you're still awake, thank you for joining this journey. Please like, subscribe,
And share your thoughts or favorite moments. Your presence makes these stories come alive.
Now close your eyes for the last time tonight. Rest well, dear night,
Rest deeply.
and may your dreams be soft as the dawn.